signs that you are one step away from completely transforming. Sounds almost like a threat, doesn't it? And in a way, it is. Because what I'm going to tell you is not comfortable, not pretty, and not easy to digest. What you are living through right now might look like stagnation, a meaningless pause, but in reality, it is the clearest sign that something in you is dying, and something deeper is about to be born. And if you recognize it, if you dare to look it straight in the face, you will know that there's no turning back. Look at your life. Notice the silence that hides behind your automatic gestures. You feel that the pleasures that used to fill you now taste like nothing, that the pains that used to tear you apart no longer wound you the same way. As if, suddenly, the world had lost its weight on your shoulders. And that neutrality, that strange calm you don't understand, is precisely the proof. You are crossing the secret corridor that leads to your transformation. Jung explained it brutally. Before any metamorphosis, the ego must die. And the death of the ego does not arrive with explosions of light or ecstatic revelations. It arrives with a void, with the sensation that what you were no longer works and what you will be has not yet appeared. It is a disturbing state, an in-between terrain where nothing fits. And if you're feeling it, if every day you wake up with the suspicion that something invisible is ripping you from the roots, it means you are already inside the process. The mistake is believing that this void is a setback. It is not. It is the dark womb where your true self is gestating. It is the interval in which your old narratives crumble and the emotions that once ruled you dissolve. You lose reactivity, you lose urgency, you lose the mask. And what remains is something that frightens, a silence so intense it seems foreign. That unsettling calm is not depression. It is preparation. It is the chrysalis closing so the self may awaken. What is happening inside you right now is invisible, but decisive. Old triggers no longer dominate, impulsive responses lose power, and you begin to look at life from another perspective. Calmer, colder, more aware. That is another test. Because when your mind quiets, it's not that the world has gone out, it's that you have stopped obeying the ego. And in that instant, even if you don't yet see it, you have already crossed the threshold toward transformation. And now notice a detail that almost always goes unnoticed. When the ego begins to crack, time distorts. You feel it in days that seem endless and at the same time empty, in hours that slip by without leaving a trace. What once seemed urgent to you dissolves. What once forced you to run no longer chases you. That is another sign that your psyche is withdrawing its energy from the superficial to concentrate it on the essential. And although it confuses you, although you feel you are losing the rhythm of the world, in reality it is the world that is falling behind while you cross into another inner dimension. It's as if your unconscious had quietly taken the helm. Jung said that true transformation doesn't begin in the conscious mind, but in the depths where you have no control. And it is there that an invisible battle is being fought. Your ego believes it is losing power, and it's not wrong. But this disarming is not a punishment, it is a liberation. Because the more the ego yields, the more space it leaves for the self to emerge. That part of you that doesn't stir with fear or with others' approval. The part that simply is, without masks or disguises. And right in this terrain, something new appears. The dissolution of the identity you thought was solid. Suddenly you discover that you are no longer the one who reacts like this, the one who always seeks this, the one who fears that. The labels you use to define yourself melt like wax, and here a brutal vertigo arises, because if you are no longer what you were, what are you now? This vertigo is not a sign of loss. It is proof that you are undergoing the most radical transition of your life. In that void where you do not know who you are, your true I is being gestated. The fascinating thing is that this process, although it seems invisible, begins to manifest in tiny details. You realize you keep silent when before you shouted, that you can listen to someone without feeling the urgency to defend yourself. That external chaos no longer drags you with the same force. And although from the outside you may seem distant or dim, in reality it is your consciousness that is expanding. It's as if you had been locked in a dark room, and little by little, the walls disappeared to reveal a horizon that was always there. The unsettling thing is that this expansion does not come accompanied by euphoria, but by calm. A calm that frightens, because it doesn't resemble anything known. And here is another proof. When you discover that serenity is not the absence of life, but the antechamber of a rebirth. That serenity is the space where your old survival instincts dissolve, where you are no longer a slave to urgency or to what others will say. You have stopped surviving and have begun to truly exist. What happens then is almost imperceptible to those around you, but you feel it in every fiber. The tension of opposites within you begins to break. You no longer fight as before between what you desire and what you fear, between what you show and what you hide. A slow, mysterious integration emerges, more like alchemy than logic. It is enantiodromia, that point where the opposites generate so much pressure that the ego surrenders. And when it surrenders, a new order appears. A broader vision that doesn't need to destroy anything, only to integrate it. And here's the twist you didn't expect. This state that seems empty is, in reality, a psychic rest. The psyche withdraws to conserve energy because what it is preparing requires all your strength. It is like the butterfly that needs the darkness of the cocoon to reconfigure each cell. From the outside, it looks like death, but inside life is being rewritten. And that pause, that unsettling calm, is not a mistake on your path. It is proof that you are no longer surviving. You are mutating. If you manage to accept this pause without despairing, if you trust that the silence is not abandonment but preparation, then you will understand the brutal truth. The void is not the enemy. It is the portal, and only those who dare to cross it return changed into something they had never before imagined themselves to be. And here appears an even more disturbing detail. When you enter this silent threshold, the relationships that once seemed immovable begin to crumble. Not because you stop loving, but because you stop needing. Those bonds that were sustained by dependency, by validation, or by fear, lose their strength. And you feel it, not as a rational decision, but as a certainty that imposes itself. You can no longer continue playing roles that do not belong to you. That discomfort that begins to grow when you talk to certain people, that unexplained tiredness in the face of situations you once tolerated, are proofs that your psyche no longer accepts being trapped in outdated narratives. The curious thing is that from the outside you will seem cold, distant, even selfish. But in reality, you are obeying a much larger inner truth. Your energy is withdrawing from false stages in order to reserve itself only for what is authentic. It is an act of spiritual survival. And although your environment judges it, that disconnection is a symptom that your transformation is already underway. The butterfly cannot remain a caterpillar, even if the world prefers to see it crawl. In this process, another unmistakable sign appears. Your relationship with pain changes radically. What once sank you now becomes a mirror. Suffering ceases to be an enemy and becomes a teacher. You begin to notice that old wounds, far from dragging you down, show you hidden paths you would never have seen from comfort. Each memory that hurt now opens like a book that reveals a message you had not known how to read. And although the memory remains intact, the emotional weight disappears. That lightness is proof that you are no longer a slave to your past. And here, something even more unsettling arises. You begin to feel you have nothing to prove, that the races toward external goals lose their shine, that the obsession with standing out or being recognized becomes absurd. Suddenly the applause sounds hollow, and the only thing that matters is coherence between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. This detachment from external noise is one of the clearest signs that the self is taking the place of the ego. And although at first it may seem empty, in reality it is freedom in its purest form. The fascinating thing at this point is that you begin to understand the value of mystery. Before you wanted certainties, you needed immediate answers. You feared the darkness of the unknown. Now you discover that uncertainty is a sacred space. It is in the dark where roots grow, where the invisible strengthens, and by accepting it, something inside you relaxes. You no longer run desperately to understand everything. You trust that life has its own rhythm, even if you don't control it. That silent, almost invisible trust is proof that the metamorphosis is already happening. What many do not understand is that true transformation is not noticed in a day of euphoria, but in 1,000 days of unsettling calm. It does not announce itself with fanfare. It hides in subtle gestures, in the way you breathe when someone tries to provoke you, in the serenity with which you make a decision without expecting applause, in the peace you feel when you let go of something that once bound you. It is these small, everyday deaths that prove you are being born again. And now comes the most striking thing. The closer you get to this new self, the more you will notice the old world beginning to crack. Not because the world itself changes, but because you no longer look at it with the same eyes. What once seemed solid proves fragile. What seemed eternal becomes relative. And that crack in reality is the announcement that you are one step, only one step, away from transforming completely. And when everything seems to have collapsed, when certainties have disappeared, and all that remains is that void you feared so much, you discover the truth that no one had told you, that silence is the seed of your inner sovereignty. You no longer depend on judgments. You are no longer dragged by noise. You are no longer a hostage to your past. You have crossed the invisible border between borrowed life and authentic life. And there, at that exact point, your definitive transformation begins. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. The end of this process doesn't come with fireworks, nor with a celestial applause, nor with a moment of public glory. It comes in secret, like a whisper. It surprises you in the everyday, when you look at the world with new eyes, when you recognize that you no longer resonate with what once dominated you, when you feel a calm that needs no explanation. That is the true rebirth. Discreet, profound, and absolutely irreversible. The question now is, do you dare to embrace this state for what it truly is? Not a failure, not a fall, but the indisputable proof that you are one step away from becoming someone completely new. Because no one emerges the same from a silence like this. Whoever crosses this threshold returns with a strength that is not learned in books, nor stolen from others' experiences. It is yours, unique, non-transferable. So listen well. If you are feeling this unsettling calm, if you notice the old world falling from your hands and you still don't know what will come, consider it a privilege. Few reach here, and you, even if you don't yet see it clearly, are already closer than you think. Now, I want to propose something. Write in the comments the phrase, "El silencio es mi prueba." Do it not for me, but for yourself, as a symbolic ritual, as the confirmation that you recognize this process in your own life. If this video has made you think, if it has stirred something inside you, subscribe, because what's coming will be even deeper, and believe me, you won't want to miss it. And I say goodbye to you in a different way. Not with a farewell, not with a "see you soon," but with a disturbing reminder. If you have made it this far, you are no longer the same person who began to listen. Something in you has changed, and that transformation will not stop even if you close this video. Now the question is, what will you do with that new you that has just awakened?